Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zeniton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Today we have a new card, new champion in fact, lots of new cards too as well. But today we have a champion that a lot of people have been looking forward to, myself included. We have Veigar. No new keyword, no new mechanic, or I guess you can argue no a new mechanic, but no new keyword or anything. So we don't have to evaluate a new keyword, but so that's nice. But Veigar, eh, that's kind of just how I feel over him. It's just like I don't think Veigar is good, but he looks fun. Anyway, enough talking about how what I think of Veigar. Let's actually go and look at Veigar and his supporting cards. So, Veigar, Shadow Isles, Bandle City, multi-region card, 4 mana, 1/4 Yordle. Awful, awful stat line. This is the stat line of a 2-drop. Now, stats don't tell the whole story of a card. So, let's look at what the rest of Veigar does. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand. If you don't have one. Darkness is a 3 mana slow speed spell that says deal 2 to an enemy. Round start, grant your darkness everywhere 1 extra damage. So, okay. Yeah, Veigar comes down, gives you a removal spell, and grows that removal spell as time goes by, while Veigar is on the field. To level up Veigar, you've dealt 12 plus damage with darkness. So the nice thing is Veigar doesn't actually get to see the damage get dealt, so that's nice. So, right away, how do you level up Veigar? Well, assuming you're going to have to create more than 1 darkness, because if you somehow are able to deal 12 damage with darkness, with the first darkness, that meant Veigar stayed on the board for 10 turns, which is crazy. So let's say, like, okay, what about 2 darknesses? That's 6 damage per darkness. That means Veigar was on the board for 4 turns. Not as crazy, but still, that's a lot of time for Veigar. So the next step is 3 darknesses. 3 darknesses means they are dealing 4 damage each. That means Veigar only has to stay on the board for 2 turns. Not as difficult, but then you have to find a way to get 3 darknesses, which that's a little tough, I would say. Now, it does seem a little tough, in my opinion, to actually level up Veigar, but I kind of like that because leveled up Veigar, in my opinion, is actually insanely powerful. 4 mana 2/5 when I'm summoned, and now at the start of the round, create a darkness in hand if you don't have one. And then at the start of the round, the darkness still grows and 1 extra damage. And now darkness can target anything, so you can hit enemy nexus now too, and your own stuff, I guess, if you want. So, interesting. Very interesting card. Really, it's the leveled up version of Veigar who is powerful. Level 1 Veigar, I'm not impressed by him in all honesty. I'm just like, 4 mana 1/4, dying to Merciless Hunter. Meh. Like, 5 stats for 4 mana. Again, like I said earlier, that's a stat line of a 2-drop. Sure, again, like I said, stats aren't everything, but I don't know. I'm a little worried. Really, I feel like it's going to come down to how easy is it to create those first couple of darknesses. Like, if you can get 3 darknesses reliably, then sure, I like Veigar. And can your opponent kill Veigar, or can you keep Veigar alive for 2 turns to make your darkness deal 4 damage? Because once Veigar levels up, you're going to keep getting darknesses over and over, so you're going to either be able to use them to remove important things on your opponent's side, or use them to hit your opponent's nexus and put them on a real clock. Because if you somehow level up Veigar, your darkness is probably doing a decent amount of damage, like 5-6 damage. That's a real clock. That's like, assuming you get a little bit of chip damage in every now and again through the course of the game, you've probably got like a 3, maybe even a 2-turn clock with your leveled up Veigar because of darkness. So I like it. Now, the way I read this, it seems, I'd assume because it says your darkness can target anything on level 2 Veigar, I feel like because of the way it's worded, it means level 2 Veigar has to be on the field for your darkness to hit Nexus. So if your opponent removes Veigar, then your darkness goes back to not being able to hit Nexus. So yeah, I like it. Very interesting card here. I've seen the biggest thing I like about Veigar is he seems to go in a lot of different decks. He's not in one specific deck. I've seen people try to put him in mid range. Myself and others are trying to put him in control. I've seen some people try to put him in aggro, which I'm just like 4 mana, 1/4 in aggro. But then they're like, oh, but it's more of a slow burn aggro. And I was like, okay, I don't have any faith in that idea, but maybe that's a thing. And his champ spell is not terrible. Very in line with a lot of the champ spell designs for a lot of recent champions. Event Horizon. 5 mana fast speed spell. Also a multi-region card. Stun an enemy. Then stun all enemies with 2 or less power. Very expensive card. 5 mana is a lot. But you're pretty much saying no to an aggro player for that one turn. Your aggro opponent attacks in with a bunch of stuff. You stun their biggest unit, and then in theory, everything else will get stunned. The issue is 2 or less power kind of whiffs on a lot of stuff. In other words, it whiffs on the 3/2s, like the 1 mana 3/2s, 2 mana 3/2s, 3/3s for 3, etc., 4 3s, so on and so forth. A little expensive there, but it's not a terrible card for a champ spell. And it does what Veigar wants you to do, which is buy some time. And because it's a fast speed spell, it's nice so you can use it during combat. You know, your opponent uses a combat trick to try and kill a unit, like your Veigar, if Veigar is blocking. And then you play Event Horizon and your opponent cries because they wasted a combat trick and they don't even kill a Veigar. But yeah, I've also seen some people say like, oh, Veigar Yasuo, like Bandle City, Ionia, Veigar Yasuo because of Event Horizon. I don't think that's good, but I could see Event Horizon itself getting played in an Ionia or in a Yasuo deck itself, but maybe. I feel like that idea is going to depend on just how much Yasuo support Yasuo gets in both Ionia and whether there are more stuns in Bandle City. We know there's another stun, that strike spell that also stuns if it doesn't kill a unit, which is technically a stun spell, but not really. But yeah, Veigar. Overall, I like the card. I don't think it's gonna be a very powerful card in the meta, like a meta definer, like I don't know, like Release Aphelios was. I don't know, Irelia, when she came out, how Irelia and Azir were pretty much shaping the meta, Nasus, etc., etc. But I do think, in my personal opinion, I think the best way to build Veigar is a Karma Veigar control deck, because you have Karma for the late game insurance, and you have pranks in the form of the Bandle City cards to try and buy time for Veigar to, you know, generate and grow the darkness and buy time for Karma. You have things like Eye of the Dragons to give you some life gain, Twin Disciplines and Denies to try and protect Veigar, Retreats as well to protect Veigar. I'm a big fan of just pairing Ionia with Veigar. Now, sure, that means you won't get the Shadow Isle cards because then Veigar is a Bandle City card, but I like it. I'm a big fan of it. Sure, it might be a little too much late game with Karma, but I like it. It reminds me sort of Ezreal Karma, because leveled up Veigar, doubling up Darkness with a leveled up Karma to target the enemy Nexus will close out games and maybe even one-shot a Nexus. But yeah, I think it's fine. But yeah, like Otterpuss is definitely a card I like, gonna just slow down the opponent. So I'm a big fan. But yeah, I don't know. Veigar good, Event Horizon. It's a solid champ spell, but I don't know. I'd rather play like, especially in Ionia, I'd rather play Concussive Palm, but it's fine for a champ spell. Anyway, we have 2 more pages of cards, so let's look at the next few cards. All right, we talked about Event Horizon enough already. Dark Bulb Acolyte. 2 mana 2/2 Augment. Okay, nice with Augment, so, you know, it's going to get buffed by things like Pranks, the Darkness itself, etc., etc. When I'm summoned, create a darkness in hand if you don't have one. All right. 2-mana 2/2 is a solid stat line. Not amazing. That's usually the stat line of a 1-drop, but for a 2-drop, it's serviceable. Thanks to Augment, it's a little bit better, in my opinion. I think this is just a solid card overall. Not much to talk about here. I think any deck that plays Veigar will play this as a 3 of. This is going to be your early game. This is really going to be the other way besides Veigar to find darkness. So yeah, I think because there is no other card besides this and Veigar to generate a darkness, you have to play this as a 3 of in any Veigar deck. And in fact, I think this card is so good that I think you could play it in a non-Veigar deck. That's a little crazy, but I've seen other people say like, this is a 2-mana 2/2 that creates what's basically a slow speed 3-mana Mystic Shot. Well, I guess it can't hit Nexus or your own units, but still. A 2-mana 2/2 with Augment that creates a 3-mana deal 2 to any enemy unit is pretty meh. That's a little slow, but it's not a terrible 2-drop, I think. Now, the issue is in Bandle City, you also have the Telescope, so if you want a 2-drop that gives you some value, I think I'd rather just play Telescope most of the time. So yeah, I think you're just gonna play this in your in a Veigar deck to, get another, what's it called? Another darkness. Now then, Stilted Robemaker, the next card. Oh, also, these are all Yordles too. I guess I should mention that. We still haven't seen Yordle synergy, so that's just a quick thing to keep in mind. All these cards that say Yordles, maybe there's a little bit extra Yordle synergy somewhere that'll make these cards even just that much better. So maybe that's why Veigar has a terrible stat line for 4 mana. But yeah, Stilted Robemaker, 4 mana 3/4. When I'm summoned, reduce the cost of your darkness everywhere by 1. This card is pretty sweet. A little expensive for 4 mana, but a decently defensive body. 3/4 for 4 is not terrible. And it doesn't really do much to impact the board, I'll say. But I like it. I am a fan of this card. And that's because just making darkness cheaper lets you squeeze in a few more plays every single turn, saving that 1 mana. And then when you play a second Robemaker, you're saving 2 mana. That might let you play just that 1 extra unit, that 1 extra removal spell, that draw spell, etc., etc. And that might be just enough to survive and stabilize against more aggressive decks, or even let you get further ahead against the control decks. So yeah, I'm a fan of it. The first one you play is pretty good. Second one's fine. Third one, it's like, okay, going from 1 to 0 is not a big jump, but it's still fine. So I don't even know how many of these I would play in my Veigar decks. I'll start with 3 of them, but I could see myself going to 2 because I only really care about playing the first one, in all honesty. So I like it, but not sure exactly how many I'll play. Okay, now the next card. Twisted Catalyzer. 2 mana 3/2. Strike. Grant your darkness everywhere, 1 extra damage. Okay, this card is good. Don't get me wrong. I like this card. 2 mana 3/2. Premium stat allocation for a 2-drop. Able to block Fearsomes, beats down really well. Sure, it doesn't survive Mystic Shots and Avalanche, but whatever. This card is very, very rarely ever going to strike more than once. All you need to do, though, is strike once. As long as this card strikes once, even if it's trading for another 2-drop, like a 2/3 or a 3/2, that's all it needs to do. It's already done this job. It traded 1 for 1, and it helps buff up your darknesses. So yeah, I like it. Presents a threat that your opponent will have to remove, so your opponent will definitely waste some removal or use a challenger, or they'll block with a card to prevent it from getting multiple strikes, so that's less removal for Veigar. I could even see some people using a Merciless Hunter to kill this, which, again, keeps Veigar safe. So yeah, I think this is also definitely a 3 of in almost any Veigar deck, pretty much every Veigar deck. So I like it. Big fan. Solid card. And let's look at the last few cards. Got a lot of them here. We can see Darkness here. Don't have to talk about that. Just, I said what it was earlier. 3 mana slow speed, deal 2 to an enemy. First card. Wizened Wizard. I don't know about this card. I really just don't like this card. 3 mana, 3/2. Round start, refill 1 spell mana. So you're not getting anything when you summon this card right away. You're just, when you first summon this card, it's just a 3 mana, 3/2 with no text. You have to start the round to get anything from this card. And then it refills 1 spell mana, which is good if you don't have spell mana. And I kind of like this in my Veigar Karma deck because in the early game, I'm going to be playing 2-drops like the Catalyzer and like the Acolyte, so I might not actually have spell mana in the early game. So yeah, I wouldn't go as far as I've seen some people say, and I've seen some people say this is a Warding Stones. And if you don't know what Warding Stones is because no one plays it, Warding Stones is the 3 mana 0/3 that says at the start of the round you get an extra mana gem that round. I wouldn't go that far and say they're the same card, but I kind of do see the comparison. But it's not Warding Stones. This doesn't ramp as well as Warding Stones, so I don't know. I just don't see myself playing this card in a lot of decks outside of maybe a Karma deck. Like, you play this, and then you're really going to be disincentivized to trade with this. Like, are you really going to trade your 3-drop for a 2-drop when your 3-drop didn't get any kind of value? I guess you can argue, like, well, trading for a 2-drop's value. Sure, but you're trading down. Your opponent's winning that trade because, sure, it's a 1-for-1 trade, but they traded a 2-drop for a 3-drop. You want this thing to live so it can keep giving you mana. I don't know. Like, in other words, you're sacrificing tempo. And I don't like sacrificing tempo for not a big payoff. And in all honesty, having this thing live for another turn is not a big payoff. Now, I guess you can argue, like, well, compared to Warding Stones, you don't lose the spell mana you get from the Wizened Wizard. Sure, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this card, but I can see myself trying it out in Karma decks, especially Veigar Karma, where I'm going to be playing a lot of early 1s and 2s and stuff. So I will have I'll struggle to actually get early spell mana. Plus, another thing I've noticed for Bandle City, at least, especially more control-y style Bandle City, the 3-drop slot's a little empty right now. Like, I can say in for Ionia, I have, if I'm gonna pair Veigar Karma, I have Ionia, and that gives me access to Shadow Assassin, and it gives me access to Tasty Feyfolk. So I don't know. But yeah, for non-Ionia Bandle City control deck, I could see this card getting played, but I'm not too impressed by Wizened Wizard. Now, this next card, Minimorph. This has been causing some uproar I've seen, and I am on the side of the people causing the uproar who think it's a good card, because I think this is a good card. Minimorph is a 6 mana burst speed spell. Transform an enemy into a 3/3 mini Minity and silence it. We can see what the mini Minity is over there on the right. Just a 3 mana 3/3, no text at all, no keywords, no nothing. This card's great. Like, good lord, this card is good. It's not auto include for every single deck, and honestly, even in certain metas, you would not play this card in your deck. It's Vengeance. That's the way I like to describe this card. This is the Bandle City Vengeance that's cheaper. And you might say, well, your opponent gets a 3/3. Sure, but this card completely neuters some decks, like Lee Sin decks, Nasus decks, Karma decks. You hit a Lee Sin with this. You hit a Karma with this. You hit Nasus with this. Your opponent is going to cry. And they can't interact with this because it's burst speed. How are you going to interact with this when it's burst speed? Like, sure, you can argue like, well, I could play Bastion or put a spell shield on a unit before they mini morph me. Okay, yeah, sure, but are you really gonna do that against every Bandle City deck just because you're afraid of mini morph? No, because not every Bandle City deck is going to play mini morph. I feel like pretty much all control Bandle City decks and even some of the more mid-rangey decks will play 1 to 2 and maybe even 3 mini morphs in the right meta. So yeah, I think in the right meta, this card is busted. But in a more aggressive meta, I'm not too scared of this. But saying this card is bad in an aggressive meta is like saying, or is bad because of aggressive decks, is like saying Vengeance is bad because of aggro decks. Sure, Vengeance is kind of mediocre against, say, like, let's use Pirate Burn. Pirate Burn is a fairly stock standard aggro deck. Like, sure, yeah, you don't want a Vengeance, a 1-drop or a 2-drop or a 3-drop outside of, I guess, like maybe Misfortune, but you're still playing Vengeance because, well, one, you're playing ladder, so you're going to run into all kinds of stuff. And even in the aggro decks, you're still going to find a decent target. Like I said, Misfortune, Gangplank, and sure, you can argue, well, this leaves behind a 3/3 for the aggro player, which is not as bad as Vengeance. Sure, but like removing Misfortune's damaging AoE and shrinking what's his name, Gangplank, and removing his overwhelm is pretty solid even against aggro. And then of course against control, basically transforming their win cons like Lee Sin's, Aurelian Souls, Karmas, Nasus, etc., is just game winning. So crazy good card, solid removal. Big fan of this card too, because removal, in my opinion, in Runeterra has been pretty bad the past few months and the past few sets. So it is a little refreshing to see a very solid removal card. Another thing is a card very similar to this was played in Magic called Beast Within. In Magic, it was a 3-mana spell at instant speed, so that's kind of like fast speed. So your opponent could interact with it. They could counter it. They could kill the card, whatever. Minimorph, you can't counter Minimorph, which is honestly like, I actually think Minimorph might see a nerf in the future. Either it will become more expensive or it will change to fast speed because it's so, you can't interact with it. I keep going back to that. That burst speed, spell speed is what's the biggest issue for me. Just, it's so good. It's so good because like all those decks I've mentioned, those Lee Sin decks, those Karma decks, Nasus, Aurelian Soul, they want to either use things like Deny or Bastion or whatever to interact with removal. And then you can argue like, or I guess like even against certain Karma decks, they're like, okay, remove my unit. I'll just play Rekindler to bring back my Karma. It's obliterate, but it's obliterate. It's a comet, fallen comet at burst speed, but your opponent gets a 3/3 instead. That's the way I'm looking at it. This is just fallen comet at burst speed, but instead of actually killing the opponent, it kills it and leaves behind a 3/3 because it is technically killing it. I guess obliterating, not killing, because comet. Anyway, if you haven't realized it, I think this card is strong, insanely good, and is going to be great for the right decks, and it's going to be a nightmare for certain decks. And now then, the last card. After I spent way too much time just fanboying over Minimorph. The last card. Tenor of Terror. Okay. Pretty nice card. Tenor of Terror is a 4-mana 2/3 with impact. Also Yordle, of course. Multi-region card as well, so it's got a little bit of versatility there. Bandle City, Shadow Isles, multi-region card. When I'm summoned, if you've played a created card or killed a unit with a spell this game, not this round, this game, so pretty easy to do this, summon a Base of Burden. Base of Burden is a 4-mana 3/2 with impact. I like this card. A little vulnerable to things like boxes, sure, but box isn't that heavily played at the moment. But just a solid 4-drop. Also, really, in my opinion, really decent for Poppy decks if you're using Poppy as a Bandle City card and not a Demacia card. Or I guess you could technically be Demacia Bandle City and still play this because it's a multi-region card. But yeah, really nice for Poppy decks, lets you go wide. Just pretty solid in general for go wide strategies. For all the players who played Hearthstone, remember how long can this go on, guy? Saronite Chaingang, the 4-mana 2/3 with taunt that created a copy of itself when you summoned it, battle cried, whatever. That card was a pretty solid card for a lot of decks. This card, Tenor of Terror, needs a little work to get his extra boy with him, but it's not that tough. Like, play a created card, or just kill a unit with a spell this game. So, okay, Vile Feast, a small unit. Play a prank or something, and then you get the base of Burden. Pretty solid, easy to activate card. Yeah, I like it. Very good. I don't think this card's going to be like a game-winning, meta-shaping card, kind of like, Ruin Runner or Merciless Hunter is, but this card is just a good, solid card, even better in more go-wide strategies. It has impact, so if you somehow give impact to it again, it gets even better, because then you're starting to stack up impact if you've, I don't know, leveled up a Poppy or something. And then again, like I said earlier, I keep going back to Poppy because this with Poppy seems pretty sweet. Somehow you get this, and then you get Poppy, attack in with Poppy. You get what? This will become the first one will be a 3/4, the base will be a 4/3, and then Poppy herself will be a 5/4. That's a lot of stats early. Now, granted, that will be on turn 5 because this thing is 4 mana and Poppy's also 4 mana, but that's fine. That means just you'll play this, and then you'll play Poppy, attack in with Poppy. And then in theory, if you bang spell mana, you'll have 4 mana to try and protect Poppy when she attacked in with, say, like Sharp Sights or Riposte or whatever other cards you want to use. So, big fan of this card. Solid, very nice value, gives you a lot of bodies on the field. Very good. And that's it. Those are all the cards that were shown today. Overall, I like Veigar, I'd say, but I don't know. I love him. I'm absolutely hyped for Veigar. I'm just a little hesitant because I'm just not sure his power level is going to be high enough to actually have a big impact on the meta, or even see a lot of meta play and competitive play. But I do honestly think there might be a Veigar Ionia, maybe even a Veigar PNZ slow control-y deck out there that seems playable. Like Veigar Ezreal might be a thing too, because the darkness is technically a spell that targets for Ezreal. So I like it. Could be completely wrong. Maybe you think Veigar or any of these cards I said are great or are bad, are in fact bad or good. In fact, the opposite of what I said. Maybe you think Minimorph's not that busted. Maybe you think Veigar is busted. I'd love to hear it. This is just how it is during reveal season. We're all just having fun, getting hyped for the new cards, theory crafting and stuff. But yeah, I would love to hear your opinion down below in the comments over what you think about these cards, and what cards you think are great and what you think are bad, and what you think of the Veigar archetype in general. In fact, I'm a big fan of the archetype. But yeah, and if you just enjoyed the video in general, I would love it if you could leave a comment or like down below. And if you guys want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can always go and If you want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can always go and check me out over on Twitch. That's how I do this outro. But yes, my Twitch is over at twitch.tv/Zeniton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all again once more for watching this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye!